Can you hear me?
Ia-l pe ăla. Ăsta rog să faci și o poză la aia. Am să zic că...
Okay, so this is what we'll be talking about today. A few of the tools that every seasoned Scrum Master should have in their toolbox. So about me, Nico did a great job introducing me. I started off as a web developer. Then I co-founded a small startup in Timișoara, where I wore many hats. And in my second life, as I like to call it, I am an Agile coach, an Agile trainer, and I help companies improve their agility or get started with Agile. And so far, it's really nice. Okay, what about you? I am curious. How many of you are or have been Scrum Masters? Okay. Oh, so many. Wasn't expecting it. So, cool. I hope you will get a few of the tools from this talk. But actually, the talk isn't as much about Scrum per se. That is, it's not about how to organize the meetings, how to manage the backlogs, how to write user stories, how to do story splitting, that kind of stuff. That is the stuff that most Scrum Masters learn at the beginning. What I would like to cover in this talk is what happens after a few sprints, maybe after 5-10 sprints. Once you get the basics of Scrum going, you need to broaden your toolbox. So, I will be bringing, I think, 8 or 9 tools, which are organized in 3 categories. And the first one would be develop yourself. Now, the Scrum Master as a job is relatively new. I mean, we've been doing software development for a while, we've been doing architecture, we've been doing a lot of these things, but the Scrum Master is one of the newer jobs in software development. So all Scrum Masters should take time and learn and research and do a lot of discussing with other seasoned people to improve several aspects. This is one of the problems that I see happening. So you take a former something, team leader, and all of a sudden the manager comes and puts on the Scrum Master hat and says, from tomorrow you are the Scrum Master. You need to do all of these extra things. And in that moment, what happens? And this is a story of a girl I've been working with. She was the typical, in my experience, case of team leader becoming Scrum Master. So if before she used to work from 9:30 till 6:30, once she received the extra Scrum Master hat because she didn't want to let go of or didn't know how to let go of the existing duties, she started coming in at 9 and staying until 7:30 or 8 in the evening. And one possible solution, and the first tool in your toolbox would be to manage your tasks. This is one of the possible ways of doing it, getting things done. Does anybody use? 1, 2, 3, a few hands. So the basic premise would be this. In order to be really productive, you need to really use every bit of spare time. But in order to do that, you need to have your next actions really clearly defined. So you will take any piece of email, communication, request from somebody that you bump into the hallway, like your manager, and decide what is the next action about that thing. And once you have a list full of these next actions, the moment you have 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, you can just scroll through that list and pick the one that you could do right there with the tools you have at that moment. Oh, by the way, I will not go into detail into each of the techniques. This is just a way to present you some techniques, and if you are having the use cases for implementing these techniques, I encourage you to then go and do some more research. Now, there are alternatives. Yeah? So Eric has been presenting the personal Kanban, there's the Pomodoro. Just pick the one that better suits your profile. Or better yet, experiment with them all. I personally have started with GTD, then I heard about the Pomodoro, I tried Pomodoro, then I tried the personal Kanban, and finally went back to GTD, because it matches better what I do. So, that's the main point. These are all tools. These are 3 tools you could pick from. Pick the one that is best for you.
Or combine them.
Or combine them. Yeah?
Do GTD with personal Kanban.
Yeah, you can do GTD and limit your work in progress. Or visualize your work. Thanks. Okay, on with the topic of personal improvement. This is something I often encounter in new teams. They have been working for a while, and then at one point they transition to Scrum, and then all of a sudden they need to find impediments. What do you mean impediments? We are doing a great job. We are doing things as we have always been doing them. It's just we are doing them in these little time boxes called sprints. So we can't seem to find any impediments. And one possible solution to that problem would be, as a Scrum Master, to study about process management. That is, I don't want to go back to the waterfall world and have this big process up front. What I'm saying is that there are all these various toolkits, like the lean side of things, or the Kanban side of things, or the theory of constraints, which help you gain different perspectives. So, for instance, Jürgen's talked this earlier this morning. He was mentioning looking at your process from a return on investment perspective. You could be looking at it from a bottleneck perspective. This is a true story. I was working with this team, and they had only one tester. They were 4 developers with 1 tester. And that tester often got, because he was really, really good, often got taken from that team and moved to another one. And the team would keep developing without testing. And you know what? At the end of the release cycle, they would have 2 or 3 bug fixing sprints. If you were to look at this from a theory of constraint, which is a toolkit perspective, you would identify that testing is actually a bottleneck. And as a Scrum Master, you could start asking questions. How could we fix this? And you might arrive at the conclusion that all the members will chip in. Or maybe you can go to the manager and say, please hire us another tester. But the point is that you need to look critically at the way you work. This is something we haven't been trained in programming school or in QA school or in VA school. So there are others. How many times has this happened to you? 10, 11?
Really?
Yeah. I have this brilliant idea. We should start doing TDD. We should start, and the team just doesn't seem to get it. They just, I can't convince them. Did it ever happen to you? No. You must be really good Scrum Masters. If that is sometimes maybe not the case, here are a few things you could try. So actually, as it turns out, change management is more or less a science. Or there are a lot of patterns that have been discovered throughout the years that can help you implement those ideas into your companies. So this is a really good book, Fearless Change. It's very popular in the Agile world. And it mentions 20 or 30 change patterns. So for instance, trial run. Instead of framing, we should all start doing TDD from the next sprint, you could say, let's try to do TDD for just 2 sprints and see how it feels. Let's see if we get any results. If not, we'll abandon it. Or maybe small steps. Maybe you think it would be a really, really good idea if your team started reading more. You could go about that by saying, okay, let's create a list of 20 books that we will read. Or you could say, okay, let's just take 1 book and then we'll see. Or another change management pattern would be the guru review. You have this change that you would like to see implemented in your team, and you call in somebody with more credibility. Maybe a senior architect, or somebody that was in this team before and everybody listens to them. Okay? Thank you. And there are many, many others. This is the third tool in the toolbox. Okay, the second set of tools revolve around enabling the collaboration. And here's another story. I was visiting one team, and I arrived there at their daily stand-up. And it happened something like this. The Scrum Master stood up and started going to the desks of everybody. And he would go and say, Adriano, how are you? Is everything okay? Did you finish what you said you would do yesterday? Yeah. Any problems yet? Just let me see. Yeah, the code looks about right. Okay? And then he moved on to the next and the next and the next. After this stand-up, I had a discussion with him. And I said, well, how are things going? And he says, you know, pretty good. Things are good. The last couple of sprints, we had to prolong them with 2 more extra days. But other than that, and that was all for a reason, you know, it's all good. Right? Then I went and discussed with the individual developers. I talked to 2 or 3 of them. And they said, yeah, it's great, you know, like I have my tasks, and here, these are my 3 tasks for this sprint. I've been working on them. Everything is cool. We're going ahead. I said, okay. They seem to be really happy. And then I went and talked to their manager. And I said, how's your team doing? And he said, they're, you know, a few months ago, I remember they used to hit their commitments for the current sprint. But 1 month, 2 months ago, we started missing them. And I have to give them 1 extra day, or 2 extra days, just to hit the commitment. Now, there are a lot of problems in this story. Trust me, I know it. But I started thinking what happened. Because this was a really, really good team earlier. And what actually happened was they had moved the office. And in the previous office, they had the visual board. And they used to go every morning at that board and have their daily stand-up. And the Scrum Master would update the chart by hand, and they would move stickies, and there would be discussions between all the team members. When they moved to the new office, they decided to keep everything into TFS. We don't need no sticking board. And this is something that I see over and over again. As developers, we tend to favor digital tools. And
The Scrum Master, which wasn't fiction either. Everything's good. We just prolong the sprint. We're doing this, we're doing that. What happened? He knew there was a problem, but it was all good. It was because of this and that and this and that. The team, what were they doing? Where did they go? Hey, we have our tasks. We know what to do. We just do that. We're just following obligations. Okay. What about the manager? That's easy. Fucking did. They don't get it.
So, my advice to you would be, if you are a co-located team, start with a visual board. Start with something that is there inside the team space. So this is a picture of another team that we were working with at the same company. On the right, they have a board that I helped them make initially. And it has something like, because they also included some business analysts that were working with the customer directly. They had the first column of things that were currently being discussed. Then they had the second column of things that were for the sprint, the third one for to do, and this was for done. And they actually even had two areas which you can't really see for the blocked items in the analysis part or in the development. And what was really interesting for me to see was that I think after we set up that board, I haven't seen them for 3 weeks. And when I visited them 3 weeks later, they had set up this new board. And it contained things like, when are our birthdays? Who is having holiday and when? These are actually plastic envelopes with all of the stories that they had finished in the previous sprints. And now it may or may not be a coincidence. But this is the team. We were working with 5-6 teams in this company, and this was the one that really picked up speed the fastest. This one is again fairly common. We have all these sprint meetings, and they're useless. And you know what? I've attended a few useless meetings myself, where you have 3 people arguing over some technical complexity, and everybody is on their cell phones and tweeting or stuff like that. And it's because they do not have effective meetings. Now, if you take one thing, this might be it. There are a few rules on how to have effective meetings. So, you need to start with an agenda. And everybody needs to know and be aware of what will be discussed in that meeting. Then, obviously, you will send it to all stakeholders, send them reminders, stuff like that. A new one. I don't know if it happens at your companies, but I have seen this quite a few times. I get an invitation. We have the sprint planning at 10 a.m. So I go there at 9:55. Nobody's in the room. And 1 or 2 people start showing up. 10:10, the Scrum Master appears and starts plugging in the laptop. And then obviously the wireless doesn't work, and that and the other. And maybe at 10:15, the meeting gets started. So, congratulations, you have just wasted 15 minutes of some of your teammates' time. So, ideally, the Scrum Master should go before and set up everything so that at 10:01, you could just get started. Then during the meeting, this is often the most difficult part. As a Scrum Master, you need to remember that your primary role is to facilitate and then to contribute. This is a very, very common reason why the meetings just go on, because the one that should be taking care of the fact that we discuss all the things and we don't sidetrack is actually involved in the discussions. So what should you do then? Well, for one, make sure it ends on time. When there's half of the time left, just say so. When there are 15 minutes left, just say so. 5 minutes, say so. If people start talking about something that's irrelevant to the current discussion, just say, okay, we will take this and set it aside. If we have time today, we will discuss it. If not, we will set another meeting for it. Again, very important, especially for the retrospective. You should generate next action lists with owners. Many of the initial retrospectives that I was part of were something like, what was good, what was bad, what should we improve? We should improve code quality. Yeah, definitely. That's something we need to work on. Yeah, we will write it on the flip chart, just to make it official. Improve code quality. What is that? No, you need to have something like, in the next sprint, each of us will spend 2 hours refactoring. In the next sprint, each of us will spend half a day pairing and writing unit tests. That is the type of action you should have after a retrospective. Then at the end, confirm that everybody understood the same things. Better yet, use visual facilitation techniques. Is anyone here familiar with visual facilitation? There they are. Okay, so visual facilitation could be as simple as taking a marker and as things are being discussed, you just write them down. So that people actually see and remember what they're doing. Now, you could go and be more advanced and create a toolkit with stickies or something like that. And when you are discussing the problem, you can say, okay, let's split into 3 groups. Each of you grab a pack of stickies, brainstorm some ideas, and once you have arrived at the conclusion, we'll reconvene and then we'll discuss as a group. And then at the end, send notes. Send notes to your managers. Show them what a good job you are doing. Send notes to the customers. Show them that you are doing progress on the features that they need. We are not talking to one another. This is again a very common one. And some of the things you could do would be to try and bring them together. And here are three possibilities. You could have a community of practice inside your company. So as a Scrum Master, you could go to the Scrum Masters of the other teams and say, let us set up a community of practice for Java programmers. Let's have them, if they want, meet every couple of weeks. Or maybe you could have a community of practice for business analysis. Or you could have one for TDD. What do I mean? You could have what is called a brown bag lunch. A brown? Does anybody do them? No, they're quite popular in the English culture. So a brown bag lunch would be something like each of us brings at work for lunch something to eat, and then we will discuss a topic during lunch. We'll just gather in the kitchen and we will have a topic and we'll just discuss that. Or maybe you could have team presentations. What you are seeing here is a gathering of a group of employees that work at Atlassian, the company that does Jira. And they have what is called FedEx Days, where they gather, and they have like 1 or 2 days off where they can research any topic they're interested in, and then they gather and make these presentations for the rest of the team. All right. The last part is about taking your team to the next step. I have heard this quite a few times recently. After they received this new Scrum Master job, and people realize, the Scrum Masters realize that they're responsible for taking their people to the next level. They come to me and say, well, we don't really know how. I will give you a couple of directions. One would be giving effective feedback. So, as humans, we are regulated systems. And we are regulated by the feedback that we receive. That is, if when you are a child, you put your finger on a candle, you know that's fire and it burns. The same would be in a team. In order to improve, you need to get feedback from people. And this has a few characteristics. It has to be as close to the event as possible. This is why the yearly reviews were really, really a stupid idea. Like, 10 months ago, you did that really, really bad thing, and now this year you won't get a raise. What is that? How is that actionable? And then it has 4 steps. You should ask for permission. You should describe a specific behavior. Describe the impact of that behavior. And discuss the next steps. So now I would like to ask you to use these 4 steps. And just for 1 minute, think about how, as a Scrum Master, you would give feedback to a colleague that for the last 2 or 3 days keeps fiddling around on his iPhone during the daily stand-up. Just think about it for a second, and then I will show you my way of saying it. Okay, so one possible way of using the model would be something like this. Ask for permission. Let's say our colleague's name is Mike. Mike, may I ask you something? May I tell you something? And he might say, no, I'm too busy. And then you just walk away. And you come again in another couple of hours. You respect their boundaries. Describe specific behavior. The last couple of mornings, I noticed you were using your cell phone during the daily stand-up. It's a fact. It's not, you weren't paying attention. You never pay attention. It's a fact, it's a behavior. Describe the impact. When you do that, you send the message that the meeting is not important to you, and that you don't feel part of the team. In turn, that may affect the way the rest of the team relates to you. Now, I know this is all soft stuff with which us hardcore programmers and testers and so on aren't really used. But this is the way to actually get people on board. We have had a discussion earlier about how to make people do things or how to influence them. And the reality is you really cannot make people do things. They have to want to do it themselves. Then you discuss the next steps. How should we have the daily from now on so that you are more involved? That is, you don't push a decision on that person, you pull one from them. Coaching is another tool. Say you have a new teammate that is a junior developer and doesn't really know what clean code is or refactoring or things like that. But you could say, and as a result he does get a lot of bugs. What you could say is have a little discussion with him and figure out where he would like to go. And he can say something like, well, I would like that in 6 months' time, the bugs that are caused by code that I wrote are down to, I don't know, 1 per sprint. Okay? Then you figure out the next step. What is the senior developer for a certain amount of time? Or we will give you, in the sprint backlog, 4 hours to read that week. We will send you to the Open Agile conference. And then you can have a progress course, you should have a progress meeting. And that will be the number of bugs. And you should see it going down over the next 12 sprints. This is the last one. We finish our sprints, but we introduce more and more bugs. And Adi has been discussing about technical excellence earlier on. Now, Scrum is just a framework. And even Ken Schreiber said, you need to add some things, and you'd better start with the XP practices. So what I'm saying is, as a Scrum Master, you need to get your team to really focus on technical excellence. And there are various tools for doing that. The simplest would be send them to a conference. Or better yet, ask them if they would like to go to a conference. You could create a library and have reading sessions. So for instance, in one team, I remember buying the XUnit testing pattern, which was a book like this, and we spent the next 6 months reading every week. We set aside 2 hours, each of us, to read another chapter, and then we would discuss it. Coding dojos. This is a format of learning in which you would have 1 or 2 people in front of a keyboard, pair programming on a certain problem, and the others are all around them, and they are providing suggestions. And every 5 or 10 minutes, they switch in front of the keyboard. You are trying to learn to narrow down a specific topic. Or you could have katas. I'm not really talking about the karate rules, though that's the inspiration. You could have coding katas. This is also something we have discussed at the open space. So, the idea behind the coding kata is that you take a small problem and you repeatedly do it. 1 time, 2 times, 5 times, 10 times, with the intent of mastering a particular technique. So, one example would be to be able to develop without touching the mouse, which might increase your productivity. Or you might want to solve a certain problem using methods of no longer than 12 lines of code. And once you've done that with 8 lines of code. Or maybe you want to learn, you're learning a new language and you need to learn the basics, like the strings and the collections and stuff like that. And you find a challenge that will force you to really have in your muscle memory the names of the methods. So, these are the things in a nutshell. Now, one quick question. Of those that I mentioned, which are ones that you are currently doing? All of them? None? Did I put you all to sleep? Okay. So, by now you must be thinking, you know, so many. And yeah, my point is not to say that you should start from tomorrow with all of them. What I'm saying is analyze your team's context and see if you need to improve in the technical skills, and then try and apply 1 or 2 things. Or maybe you are constantly being pushed by managers and they keep saying, what are the impediments you are working on? And you have no clue. How should I look at our process? Everything looks great. And then maybe you will read a book about Lean and understand push versus pull, or Kanban, limiting your work in progress, stuff like that. Or maybe Or maybe you need to get better organized, and you start with that. And the thing is, you are not alone. Even though these are all your responsibilities, you don't have to do them yourself. We don't want to go back into the waterfall world, the functional world. Well, I'm the Scrum Master. I'm the sole responsible for improvement. It's just not like that. Maybe you will take the next couple of sprints to learn about personal Kanban, and you ask your teammates if any of them would like to read The Goal, which is a book on the theory of constraints, which might help you analyze your process more and get a few clues about where you could improve. Okay, so that's it. I tried to be as brief as possible.
Who's never been in less than effective meeting? Anyone?
All the rest of you have never been in a meeting that was not that effective? The topics that Flavius explained are really awesome. We use them to help people to actually get to a little bit more effective meetings. I just wanted to add one. So, you know the concept of limit your work in progress? Yes, I doubled my fluffiness factor. Do you know the concept of limiting your work in progress? So not doing 17 things at the same time, but trying to limit that to 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. Use that on meetings. So clarifying the goals, which was one of the things Flavius talked about, very important. Why the hell do we go to a meeting? What is the goal of a meeting? What do we want out of this? And I have one things that I want to challenge you. For the next meeting, whether you're a Scrum Master, a developer, whomever, I don't care. Try to help the person that is organizing the meeting, because mostly a meeting is not facilitated, what I've seen, to keep to one goal. Have a whip limit of one goal at the same time. So if you're in a sprint planning session, and you start splitting a story, that's grooming. That's not sprint planning. Then say, stop, other hat, you can do hats. You've had several hats, so you can do hats. We stop at sprint planning now, we go into a grooming session. This is the goal. The only goal is to split this. Once you reach that goal, you say, high five, victory, we did it. Now we go back to the sprint planning session. This is something that can help you tremendously in actually getting your meetings shorter, which we all want, right? And more effective.
Thank you. So, Eric introduced the next question. So I have been telling you about some of my favorite tools. I'm curious if you can share some of yours, which you find that are really, really useful. What haven't I mentioned that you use and see to be effective? Come on, don't be shy. Things like, I don't know, you need to really know how to do story splitting. Or maybe prioritize the backlog. Others that come to mind? Please do.
There's an app on the iPhone that lets you put in, we have this amount of people in the meeting, and the average pay, the average cost of that person on a daily basis. So for instance, I'll give you an example. A typical developer in Belgium would be sold for about 500 to 600 euros a day. So you put that in. Yeah, if you want to go to Belgium. We can use some good developers here. And you just let it run, the timer. We did it at some point where we had the CFO, the CEO, 4 business stakeholders, me as an external coach, 9 developers, and a product owner. And I did that exercise. And we were waiting for one team member who thought he didn't really need to come. And we waited for 20 minutes. And then I just showed him, you just lost over 2,000 euros waiting, just waiting for this person. The good thing, remember back Jürgen talked about making things financially visible? Well, I can assure you the CEO was not happy with that one. And no, they actually did a little talk with that person. But again, it's about visualizing data, creating that awareness. Because honestly, you're being paid anyway, so you just sit there. It can help.
Thank you. Any others? Yeah.
If you keep track of what's going on effectively without getting distracted, your working progress
During the meeting, you said.
not necessarily during your day.
In my job as a coach or as a Scrum Master?
No, usually as a Scrum Master, as people that usually get demand.
Okay.
Or places to limit your distraction.
Okay, this is a very good question. Actually, in the GTD toolkit, David Allen speaks about 3 types of work that you can do. You can do work that you planned. You can do work as it shows up. So the manager comes by your office and says, yeah, can you please fix this? And then the 3rd type of work is planning your work. And one thing would be to start by tracking the amount of work that you do that you have planned versus the amount of work that you do that you did not plan. And maybe in that case you could use something like the Pomodoro technique, which actually splits your time in half-an-hour chunks, which you plan in the morning, and every time you get interrupted, you cut off that Pomodoro. And you can look at the end of the day and see how many Pomodoros did you do. And actually when I was a manager, on average I did 2 Pomodoros a day. That meant that I could work for one hour without being interrupted. So you could start there.
In the end, I'll just get frustrated to see that I would accomplish only 2 Pomodoros are the same. So I just quit because it was so annoying.
Yeah, but see, the tool revealed the problem, and now you have two options. And this happens also in Scrum teams. Scrum may reveal that you have a weakness as a team, and you can choose to say, yeah, well, we'll have something around that, or maybe we'll just not look at it, or you can choose to face it. So actually, I think, I don't know, in the problem, in the personal responsibility model, that would be
Yeah, it was quitting.
justification.
No, it was quitting. So
It was quitting.
It was definitely quitting. I said I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. So you have the problem, Pomodoro makes it visible, and you say, well, Pomodoro is stupid, so I quit. You know what? The problem is still there, just so you know. In case you didn't realize, the problem is still there. So it might still be your personal time management problem. It might not.
So I can tell you what I did in my case. When I realized that was like that, I set a first goal, and remember the change management method, small steps. I said, for the next couple of weeks, I want to do 4 Pomodoros a day. And then 6. And that's about the maximum I got. So 3 hours a day of uninterrupted work, which for a manager I think is reasonable. I think they made some studies that on average managers get to work something like, I think, 11 minutes without being interrupted. So maybe I was a bit ahead of the curve in that area. Any other questions?
Do you have any
Last question.
Any problems with demotivation? Did you have any problems with demotivation?
Related to the Pomodoro?
No. In your Scrum.
Yes. One of the things that demotivated me the most when I was a Scrum Master was precisely that problem. I can't get people to do these things. And I would have these long meetings where I would explain what we should do and build up this nice little big model of the future. They just wouldn't take my word for it. It's just because I haven't used the small steps. Just because I haven't used something like run a little experiment. So yeah, the answer would be yes.
If if you want more information, I know a cute game on motivation. So talk to me over beer or funny.
At the happy hour networking tree.
Yeah.
Happy hour 2
Okay, so I think my time's up. Thank you.